Life can change in a heartbeat, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. These stories reveal how ordinary moments turned into unthinkable tragedies, from everyday routines to bizarre mishaps, fate struck without warning. Here are some of the craziest accidental deaths that left the world stunned. It was a quiet afternoon in a small neighborhood in Phoenix. The kind of day that passes without much notice. Sunlight filtering through blinds, faint traffic in the distance, and the gentle hum of a home going through its usual rhythm. Inside one house, a young father was tending to his baby. The child was 8 months old, still discovering the world. Curious about every sound and touch, bath time had become part of their daily routine. A small plastic tub sat inside the bathroom, filled just enough to clean and comfort the infant. The father gently placed the baby inside, keeping one hand near the child as he reached for soap and a washcloth. Laughter filled the small space, the kind of small, warm moment most parents cherish. At some point, he realized he'd forgotten to bring a towel. It wasn't far, just a few steps down the hallway. He left for what must have felt like seconds, expecting to return before anything could happen. But when he came back, everything had changed. The baby was no longer sitting upright. The water was still, except for the tiny ripples spreading outward. He rushed forward, pulling the child out, calling for help. The house that had been filled with everyday sounds turned silent, except for his voice and the faint echo of panic. Emergency responders were contacted immediately. Paramedics arrived quickly, trying to restart the baby's breathing, but their efforts couldn't change the outcome. Authorities later described it as an accidental drowning. There were no signs of neglect or intention, just a momentary lapse in attention, the kind that can happen to anyone during routine care. But in this case, that brief absence became irreversible. Investigators reminded the public that infants can drown in just an inch or two of water. Even a few moments without supervision can be dangerous. It's something most people don't think about, how quickly silence can replace laughter, how easily an ordinary day can shift into tragedy. The father cooperated fully with officials. No charges were filed, as it was clear he never meant for any harm. Neighbors later described him as attentive and loving, someone who adored his child. For the family, it wasn't a matter of blame, but of unbearable loss. Incidents like this are rare, yet they underline the fragility of everyday moments. A short task, stepping away for a towel, answering a phone, checking on something, can change everything when a baby is involved. Safety experts emphasize keeping supplies within arm's reach and never leaving a child unattended, not even for a few seconds. But this incident isn't the only one where a quiet day turned deadly. Across the world, another ordinary moment would soon be shattered. It was an ordinary spring evening in Indiana. The air was mild, daylight was beginning to fade, and most homes were winding down for the night. Inside one foster home, 21-month-old Nova Leigh Bryant was being prepared for a bath. She was at an age filled with movement and curiosity, where every sound and splash felt like discovery. Her caregiver, 24-year-old Halen Volpati, had taken responsibility for the toddler's routine that night. The bathtub was filled with water, not too high, just enough for a quick wash, but what was meant to be a brief and simple task would soon turn into something irreversible. According to investigators, the woman allegedly left the bathroom to answer a phone call. What began as a short conversation stretched on for more than half an hour. During that time, the young child remained in the tub, unsupervised. The sound of water, once playful, went unnoticed as the minutes passed. When the caregiver finally returned, she found Nova unresponsive. Panic followed. A call to emergency services, attempts to revive her, and the sudden rush of paramedics into what had been a quiet home moments before. Despite every effort, the little girl could not be saved. She was pronounced dead shortly after being taken to a nearby hospital. Authorities began an investigation immediately. The foster mother's account raised questions about negligence and supervision. Police reports stated that she admitted to being on the phone in another room for a significant amount of time. The water level in the tub, combined with the lack of attention, had led to the child's drowning. In the weeks that followed, the case drew wide attention. Child welfare agencies reviewed the foster placement process, asking how such a young child was left without direct oversight. Prosecutors later filed charges against Haylin Volpati for neglect resulting in death. The incident became part of a larger discussion on the responsibilities of foster care and the critical need for constant vigilance when caring for small children. Experts noted that toddlers can lose consciousness in less than a minute if submerged and drown silently without splashing or noise. Even a few inches of water can become fatal if a caregiver steps away bath time, though routine remains one of the riskiest moments for very young children when left unattended. For Nova's biological family and community, the tragedy was difficult to comprehend. She had been in foster care for her safety and well-being, yet the environment meant to protect her became the setting of her loss. If you're following these unbelievable accidents closely, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another story this chilling. It was a quiet afternoon in a high-rise neighborhood of Dubai. The sun reflected off the glass towers, and the streets below moved at their usual rhythm. Cars gliding past, families returning home, and children finishing school for the day. Inside one apartment on the 9th floor, a 5-year-old child was playing near the living room window. It was one of those small, outward-opening windows meant for ventilation, not designed to be opened wide. The apartment had been locked and secured as usual. The family went about their routine, confident that their home was safe. But curiosity is natural at that age, and in just a few seconds, an ordinary afternoon became something no one could undo. Reports later explained that the window's latch was not properly fixed. The child managed to push it open while standing on a nearby surface, possibly a sofa or a low table. The window opened outward, and with one unsteady movement, balance was lost. There were no safety bars or child locks in place. The distance to the ground below was nearly 30 meters. Residents heard a thud and rushed outside, only to discover what had happened. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but it was too late to help. The child had suffered fatal injuries from the fall. Authorities quickly began investigating how such an accident could occur. Inspectors found that the small window design was common in older residential buildings. While it met ventilation standards, it lacked the added safety features required in newer constructions. Police ruled out foul play, describing it as a heartbreaking household accident. Community members were deeply affected by the news. Neighbors who had often seen the child playing in the building courtyard struggled to process how quickly a moment of innocence had turned into tragedy. Many families in the area began checking their own apartments for unsecured windows or furniture placed too close to openings. Safety officials later issued public reminders urging residents to install window restrictors, limit open angles, and keep climbable objects away from high openings. Even in modern buildings with high railings and narrow panes, a child's natural curiosity can turn dangerous if precautions aren't taken. The tragedy sparked conversations across Dubai about child safety in high-rise apartments, a growing concern in cities with vertical living spaces. It highlighted how urban life, with all its conveniences, can also hold hidden dangers in everyday architecture. For the family, there were no words or explanations that could fill the sudden silence left behind. A tiny opening, meant only to let in air and light, became the cause of an unimaginable loss. It was a regular winter morning in the UK when 3-year-old ALFIE Lamb was traveling with his family. Like many young children, he was seated in the back of the car, playing quietly or watching out the window as the vehicle moved along familiar streets. The day seemed ordinary, with nothing to suggest that anything unusual would occur. At some point, the driver or front passenger adjusted their seat, sliding it backwards to create more legroom. ALFIE, sitting in the footwell area behind the front seat, was suddenly caught in a dangerous position. The movement of the seat caused it to press down into the space where he was sitting, trapping him between the seat and the floor. The pressure on his body made it extremely difficult for him to breathe properly. His parents noticed immediately that something was wrong. ALFIE could not free himself from the confined space and attempts to move him from under the seat were unsuccessful at first. Emergency services were called quickly, and paramedics arrived at the scene to provide urgent medical attention. They worked to relieve the pressure and restore his breathing, then transported him to the nearest hospital for further care. Despite the prompt response of medical professionals, the delay caused by the time he spent trapped meant that severe complications had already developed. The lack of oxygen, combined with the crushing pressure, resulted in fatal injuries. ALFIE passed away from crush asphyxia, leaving his family, friends, and community in deep shock. The accident highlighted the hidden dangers present even in familiar, everyday environments. Vehicles, while generally safe, contain confined spaces that can quickly become hazardous, especially for small children. Situations that may seem harmless, such as adjusting a seat, can have unexpected and tragic consequences if a child is in the wrong position. Following ALFIE's death, discussions arose about car safety for young children, the importance of supervision inside vehicles, and awareness of how ordinary adjustments can unintentionally put children at risk. Families were reminded to ensure that children are seated in safe positions, away from areas where they could be trapped, and to maintain vigilance during travel. Although incidents like this are rare, ALFIE's story underscores the unpredictability of everyday life and the fragility of young children. It serves as a sobering reminder that even brief moments of inattention or ordinary actions can lead to severe consequences. His parents and community continue to honor his memory by raising awareness about child safety in vehicles, hoping that increased knowledge can prevent similar tragedies in the future. It was a quiet summer morning in Minnesota when Sydney Gallagher, a 17-year-old high school student, went to the local dental clinic for a routine procedure. Like many teenagers, she was scheduled to have her wisdom teeth removed, something her parents and she considered a standard part of growing up. The day began like any other, with her arriving at the clinic, checking in, and completing the necessary paperwork. Her parents stayed close, chatting with the staff and making sure everything was in order before the procedure. The dental office was well lit and calm, with the usual hum of equipment and the soft chatter of staff attending to their patients. Sydney was placed in the surgical chair, and the dental team prepared for the extraction. She had undergone basic preoperative checks, including her vital signs, and everything appeared normal. There was no indication of any underlying health issues that could complicate the procedure. Once the anesthesia was administered, the team began the extraction. For a while, everything seemed to proceed smoothly. The dental assistants and surgeons followed standard protocols, monitoring Sydney carefully as the operation continued. However, within moments, an unexpected medical crisis arose. Sydney's heart suddenly stopped, and she went into cardiac arrest. The team immediately responded, initiating resuscitation efforts and calling for emergency medical assistance. Paramedics arrived quickly and continued advanced life support measures as she was transported to a nearby hospital. Her parents followed, anxious and trying to remain hopeful, while the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize her condition. Doctors monitored her closely, placing her on life support to maintain essential bodily functions. Despite the best efforts of the medical staff, Sydney's condition did not improve as expected. Over the next few days, the hospital team ran extensive tests and consulted with specialists, hoping to identify the cause of the sudden cardiac arrest. The family was kept informed at every step, receiving updates on her condition and the ongoing treatment. They struggled to understand how a routine procedure could lead to such a severe outcome, grappling with a mix of disbelief and concern. Ultimately, despite continuous medical intervention, Sydney's body could not recover. After several days on life support, she passed away, leaving her family, friends, and the community in shock. Her death highlighted the rare but serious risks that can accompany routine dental procedures, even when all standard precautions are followed. Such incidents are extremely uncommon. They underscore the need for thorough preoperative evaluation and careful monitoring throughout even seemingly minor surgeries. Her family, though devastated, has since worked to raise awareness about potential medical complications during routine procedures, hoping that increased knowledge can prevent similar tragedies in the future. If you're following these unbelievable accidents closely, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another story this chilling. It was a typical spring afternoon in Cincinnati when Kyle Plush, a 16-year-old high school student, returned home from school. He had plans to practice with his sports team and needed some equipment from the back of his family's minivan. The driveway was quiet, the neighborhood calm, and his parents were inside the house, busy with chores. Kyle opened the rear sliding door of the van and began reaching toward the equipment stored behind the seats. In the confined space, he tried to maneuver around the seats, unaware of how easily someone could get wedged in that particular spot. At some point, he became trapped between the seat and the back of the vehicle. The angle and limited space made it impossible for him to free himself. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Kyle pulled out his phone and dialed 911. He tried to explain where he was and what had happened, but the position he was in made it difficult to speak clearly. Emergency responders were alerted and began working to trace the call, while Kyle made another attempt to call for help. Despite his efforts, locating him inside the van proved extremely challenging. The vehicle's design and the way he was positioned concealed him from view, even to people who were familiar with the van. Time passed, and responders worked diligently to find him. Family members arrived at the scene and attempted to help, but the confined space limited any direct assistance they could provide. The 911 operators continued to guide efforts remotely, while first responders navigated the challenges of accessing him safely. By the time Kyle was discovered and emergency medical care was administered, crucial minutes had passed. He was transported to a nearby hospital where medical staff worked to stabilize him. Unfortunately, the delay in locating him meant that he had suffered severe complications from being trapped for an extended period. Despite the intensive efforts of doctors, Kyle did not survive the incident. The accident was a devastating shock to his family, friends, and the local community. What began as a simple task, retrieving sports equipment, turned into a fatal emergency in a matter of moments. The case highlighted how everyday situations can carry unforeseen dangers, especially in environments where physical spaces are tight and access is limited. Kyle's death prompted discussions about safety precautions around vehicles, the importance of supervision for teenagers in certain scenarios, and awareness of how quickly accidents can escalate. Families were reminded to check on younger occupants, ensure that spaces in vehicles are safe to navigate, and to act quickly when someone might be at risk of being trapped. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon. You won't want to miss the shocking stories we have coming next.